So one of the things about Baldy that I really, really respect is, boy, just so many things, but we share a lot of points of view that are very similar. And he has a thing that I asked him to tell you about adversity. And what was it you said about adversity?
It's opportunity.
Yeah, adversity is opportunity. So his adversity, I don't know that a lot of people know this about you.
I don't tell it that often. It's hard, you know, I have a little bit of a hangover after I tell it for a while. I'm happy to tell you, but it's hard to talk about a little bit.
Yeah, I can understand why. So your mother was brilliant.
Brilliant. She went to Cornell, got a master's in organic chemistry, went into cancer research. She had a minor in English, and believe it or not, she memorized the complete works of Shakespeare.
Crazy.
Who can do that?
And then something changed.
Something changed when she was pregnant with me at about age 35, and she came down with adult schizophrenia. Who knows? It's like that movie, A Beautiful Mind. And so she had to be institutionalized, and I was raised by my grandparents for about 7 years. And then somehow she got to California, probably because of the liberal mental illness laws. And she sent for me in a telegram, and they loaded me on a TWA jet connecting in Chicago as a 7-year-old, and I flew all the way. And then she forgot to pick me up at the San Francisco airport because she's mentally ill. But eventually we lived together in Oakland, East Oakland. She thought the communists were bugging our telephone lines. She thought the communists would take me if I went to school. So around second grade, you have to forgive my youthful memory, I'm not totally clear on it, but around second grade she withdrew me from school. And she became alcoholic, and we lost our apartment, and we became street people. You wouldn't think it was possible, but in East Oakland I was a street person for many years. And we lived in boxcars and parks and, you know, creek beds, Catholic mission homes.
Second grade to fifth grade?
About.
Yeah, so you were not in school, you didn't learn any of that stuff.
And then I went to juvenile hall and couldn't get out. I wouldn't identify myself because the one thing my mom said that I believed was that if I ever got caught playing hooky, I'd go to San Quentin for life. I knew she was mentally ill and a lot of things were crazy, but that sounded like it could be true. So, so when I got into juvenile hall for shoplifting, because we were desperate, I wouldn't identify myself, despite 2 appearances in juvenile court, and somehow they found my father, and I went under his custody in Orinda, which is an upper middle class neighborhood, among white kids, and I don't remember hardly ever being around white kids before, and you know, I had the accent of a black kid in East Oakland, and I went to this white neighborhood, and there was a big adjustment period.
Boy, I bet. Because not to mention that, I mean, on the streets, you literally were filthy. You were just trying to find food wherever, and you shoplifted to get food and stole things when you had to, and that was actually how you ended up in juvenile hall in the first place. And I
shoplifted a sweater from Ruse Atkins, the department store, for Christmas for my mom.
Oh.
And a detective caught me.
That's just so your adversity, and so you have this is the mind-boggling thing, because you graduated with a master's from Stanford. Yeah. And yet you could hardly read.
I read really well, because the one thing we had was a public library card, and my mom somehow could read all these books really fast, and so we'd go to the library and we were able to check out 7 books, and I'd get one and she'd get 6. And when we stayed out of sight during the day so the truant officer wouldn't get us, we'd be reading books. So I read a lot of books, but I didn't know like arithmetic or anything like that. So
what turned it around for you?
Well, a teacher in 9th grade. So what happened was, when I got into 6th grade, I didn't know what the kids were doing there. Prepositional phrases, times tables, all that kind of stuff. I had no idea. So they took me in and gave me an IQ test. It was low, very low. And they decided I was learning disabled, and so I went into learning disabled classes.
How did they come to these conclusions? That just blows my mind.
Exposure and interest, I think. IQ test measures exposure and interest.
Yeah.
So, and I wouldn't confess to anybody, not my father, not anybody, that I'd missed those years of school. So they didn't know. And I wouldn't do it because I didn't want to go to San Quentin for life. So I get into 9th grade, and there was a teacher, a chemistry, introduction to science teacher, who'd had his face badly disfigured by a chemical accident in the lab, and so the other kids made a lot of fun of him and kind of stood off because he, Mr. Davis, wonderful guy, and I bonded with him because we were 2 kind of outcasts the way I viewed it. You know, I still spoke gutter slang and didn't get along with white kids very much, and so he started teaching me all kinds of things about science that just were wondrous, opened my world up. It was just so amazing. Like when you put a thermometer in ice and you cool it, all of a sudden it stops getting colder until it's totally frozen, and then it gets colder again. It was amazing.
That's crazy.
So I loved it and just did really well and aced that, and I started acing calculus and geometry and everything. I just couldn't do English. So at least I sort of had a notion that maybe I'm not, my nickname was the retard, but maybe I wasn't a retard all the way. You know how junior high kids are.
I do.
So maybe I was only a retard in English, not science. That's what I thought.
So then you managed to then get into Stanford.
Well, so that was a long haul, actually, because I did get accepted to UC Santa Barbara, but I couldn't pass non-credit English because they would bust out Shakespeare, and I had post-traumatic stress from Shakespeare. My mom memorized it. She was very disruptive in Oakland because she'd get drunk and she was loud. Schizophrenics do that a lot. And so she'd be walking down the sidewalk belting out Hamlet or something like that. And if anybody thinks their parents embarrassed them, they don't know how my mom did me. I'd be a block behind. I couldn't separate myself from her because my whole life depended on her. But I just didn't want to be associated with her, and she's belting out Shakespeare. So I just couldn't, and I still can't, go into an English class and have them talk about Shakespeare. I just couldn't. So I'd cut the classes or whatever, and I got expelled on academic probation from UC Santa Barbara, despite acing calculus and Fortran and all that kind of stuff, and I was so angry. I thought I'd never go back to college campus again, and then I met a girl.
And married her.
And married her when I was 20, and she convinced me to go back to college, and it was hard, but I did it. I still didn't do well in English, but I passed it anyway with her help. But I did so well in everything else that I got a scholarship to Stanford. And it's something I dreamed of because it's what my mom said she always dreamed for me. It was the one thing that she wanted, and she was suffering. Schizophrenia is, miserable, and she was suffering so badly. I just wanted to tell her, Mom, I'm not going to Cornell, but I'm going to Stanford. So.
Man, that's fantastic. So somehow the opportunity came, and somehow you wanted it enough. Because a lot of people get stuck. They're like, my life sucks. I suck. I'm stupid. I'm a retard. I'm whatever, and they can't get out of that loop. But somehow you wanted something more, and when the opportunity was handed to you, you said, "Hells yeah." And you went for it. Yeah,
I mean, of all my friends in Oakland, I've lost touch with them all. They were elementary school friends anyway, age friends. And, I just was really lucky. I ended up in juvenile hall, and then I had a father who got me. But then once I was out, everything seemed so glorious compared to that.
Yeah.
Because in those days, I don't think I thought about the next day. I don't think I thought about the evening. I never thought about the future or anything like that. I just thought about just getting through the day. Where are we going to... We're hungry, and we're cold, and it's freezing here tonight, and nobody paid us any attention. When you're a filthy homeless kid like that, people make eye contact with you for just a second and they look away. They never say anything to you. And your self-esteem is zero. You have no self-esteem. So I just never thought about any of those things. But then once I actually could experience some other form of life, it's like, in fact, I said at Stanford in a speech once that where I had to speak in front of a huge group of people, first public speech of my life, almost. I said, you know what, I appreciated being at Stanford more than any student, I think, in the previous 100 years of Stanford, because I never thought I could do it. I was the retard. I missed a lot of years of school. I got expelled from college. It just seemed like the impossible dream that could never happen. And when it did happen, I decided, you know what, I'm going to seize every precious moment of it and just love every bit of it. And that's what I did for 2 years when I was there. I go back there and I still kiss the ground when I walk on that campus because I just adore it.
Yeah, so, I can see why.
And every time I walk on campus, I wonder if there's anybody I've ever met who loves it as much as I do, because I just thought it was so unattainable.
Yeah, so hold on to those dreams.
Yeah, when you have the spark of an opportunity, you just seize it and go for it.
Yep, so. That's great advice. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Okay, that's the advice of the day. Go for it.